Greetings and welcome to the official first episode of my podcast series English Sovereigns. Nobody will have heard of this king, yet he is the common ancestor of every monarch save 3 of our kings. This man is called King Egbert. Egbert was not the first king of Wessex, but we are beginning with Egbert because he was the grandfather of the man who first conceptualised England, as I mentioned in the introductory podcast, that is King Alfred, and it is really under Egbert that the first wheels are perhaps a little inadvertently set in motion to create England. Egbert was a descendant of a man called Cerdic, who was a warrior. He had inherited the kingdom of Wessex. This is Egbert, after returning from exile in Francia, which is now France, for 13 years during the reign of his predecessor Beorhtric, because Beorhtric and Egbert were related, and Beorhtric wanted Egbert gone, so he didn't have a threat to his throne. And in this, Beorhtric received help from the Mercian overlord Offa. Now, at this point, it's probably quite useful to explain the Heptarchy and the Anglo-Saxon origin story, as it were. So the Heptarchy consisted of 7 Anglo-Saxon states. So that was Wessex, which is kind of the southern coast of England. You had Kent, which is basically where it is now. You had East Anglia, which again is kind of where it is now. You had Northumbria, Sussex, and Essex. And these kingdoms during the years 600 to around actually the time of King Egbert fought each other a lot, and eventually Mercia and Wessex and East Anglia, and then I guess Northumbria too, were emergent over the remaining 3. These kingdoms came about originally because the Anglo-Saxons had migrated to the British Isles. So the Romans left in about the year 400, and therein began the period called the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages were obviously, they're called that because we don't know much about what happened during that time. But what we do know is that Anglo-Saxons did come over from the mainland continent, mainly kind of Germany, Jutland kind of region, and settled within what we would now call England. So fast forward to the 750s and the latter half of the 8th century, Offa was king of Mercia, and Mercia was the dominant Anglo-Saxon kingdom in this time. Note, there were no Danes or Viking raids yet. The first Viking raid would occur at Lindisfarne in 799. However, Mercia's dominance would not last long because Offa died, and then Egbert came to the throne of Wessex in the year 802. Now, with Anglo-Saxon kings, there isn't much in the way of primary source evidence because, well, it was so long ago. King Egbert's reign was mainly occupied with ending the Mercian predominance, and this he did very successfully, I would say. So in the year 825, he fought at the Battle of Ellendon. He beat Beornwulf of Mercia near Swindon, which helped to end Mercian domination on the field of battle. And in the year 829, he actually invaded Mercia itself and forced their new king Wiglaf into exile, making Egbert the Bretwalder, which means the king of the sort of predominant king of the sort of British Isles, England, although they would not have called it Britain at this time. Aside from that, Egbert was able to ensure the succession remained with his line and not lines of some of his predecessors, and he also established the principle of male primogeniture, at least to the extent that it could exist in Anglo-Saxon politics, where the monarch was not automatically chosen because they were born of the previous king. They had a thing called the Witan, which would decide which of the king's children would be the successor designate to the throne. He died, we don't know how, in the year 839, and he was buried in Winchester, leaving the throne to his son, Ethelwulf. There isn't an awful lot to evaluate here, obviously, but asserting the predominance of Wessex over Mercia and ending the relative mercy and hegemony was probably the most important thing Egbert did, but because of the lack of material we have on him, there is only so much I can say. And with that, I thank you for listening, and goodbye.